Hello and welcome to this video on Sheila Birling. Today we're going to do an analysis of Sheila's character. Before we get into what I think, I want you guys to have a go. Brain dump every single thing that you know about Sheila Birling's character. There's a guide on the screen here to give you a bit of a plan for what to write. So pause the video, brain dump everything you know, and then when you've got that all out of your head and onto paper, start the video again. Okay, so I'm going to take you through my thoughts on Sheila. You may have some different things or some additional things compared to what I have on the screen. That is absolutely fine. There are so many things that we could say about Sheila that I could fill several videos about her. But I'm just going to zoom in on the key ideas. So first of all, what does she do in the play? Well, she receives an engagement ring from Gerald. This is confirmation that she's going to go up the social hierarchy. Gerald is part of the aristocracy. Sheila is part of the upper middle classes. So she is making a very good marriage indeed, and she will be moving up. She also, in Act 1, asks Gerald where he was the previous summer. Now, this is really interesting because it's a hint that whilst Sheila behaves in quite a silly way in Act 1, in quite a childish way at some points, she actually is quite intelligent and she really does understand more about what's going on around her than she lets on. So the previous summer, there's a spoiler here, so turn the video off if you haven't watched the play. The previous summer, Gerald was having an affair with Eva, and Sheila's kind of cottoned on to the fact that something was going on. She doesn't quite know what, but she knows that there was something. When she asks Gerald about this, she's half serious about it, but she's also a little bit playful. And I think the reason why she's being quite playful, she's trying to pass it off as a joke, is because she doesn't want to lose that engagement ring. She doesn't want to lose this marriage to Gerald because it is incredibly valuable for her financially, for her self-esteem, for her social class. And also, I think she does love Gerald at this point. So she doesn't want to push it too hard, but she is kind of making it known that she is aware that something was happening. Later on in Act 1, Sheila confesses that she caused Eva to be fired from Millwood's shop. So Sheila had gone to Millwood's to try on a dress. She had been embarrassed because the dress didn't fit, it didn't look right, and she thought that Sheila was laughing at her. Sorry, she thought that Eva was laughing at her, and she complained to the manager, and she resulted in Eva getting fired. As the play progresses, though, Sheila really grows in compassion and empathy. She does feel remorse for what has happened with Eva. And at the end, she's arguing in favour of compassion. Sometimes people call her the mouthpiece of the inspector. She almost speaks for the inspector at the end after the inspector has left the play because she supports his ideas. In terms of key quotations then, in the opening stage directions, she's described as being a pretty girl in her early 20s, very pleased with life and rather excited. She's excited about getting engaged. She's typically, kind of stereotypically girlish at this point. Then when she gets the ring, she says, "Oh, it's wonderful. Look, mummy, isn't it a beauty?" We'll come back to that quotation later. As the play progresses, Sheila becomes slightly more rebellious, slightly more argumentative with her parents. She starts to drop the facade of this kind of infantilized, childish girl and becomes more mature in her speech. And here she's arguing with her father when he talks about the girls having gone on strike, and she says the girls aren't cheap labour, they're people. When she confesses to what she's done to Eva to get Eva fired, she says, "I felt rotten about it at the time, now I feel a lot worse." Later on, when Mrs. Birling is arguing with the inspector and saying, "You can't tell me what to do, I'm not ashamed of anything," that kind of thing, Sheila says to Mrs. Birling, "You mustn't try to build up a kind of wall between us and that girl, as in don't put a barrier between us and Eva. We need to look at her experience, we need to understand what she went through, because that's the only way that we can learn from this." She's also quite sarcastic to Gerald. She calls him the wonderful fairy prince when she finds out that he's had an affair. And at the very end of the play, she says to her parents, "The point is, you don't seem to have learnt anything." At this point, she's really direct, really rebellious, speaking her mind. She is transformed completely from that childish, immature girl that we have at the start of the play to a much more mature, compassionate woman at the end. What does she symbolise then? Well, it's this possibility for change from individualism and capitalism to collectivism and empathy. Sheila shows that there is hope for the future. There's hope for a better world for us all. In terms of key vocabulary, she's materialistic at the start, but then she has a moral epiphany. She becomes receptive, remorseful, empathetic, very malleable, which means changeable. And that is all very different from how she was infantilized at the start of the play. So before we go into our analysis, I want to ask you a question. What is a method? In lots of your GCSE English literature questions, the examiners will be saying that they want you to analyse or they want you to explore methods. Some of you might refer to this as language devices or structural devices, but the overall term for this is methods. So I want you to just pause the video and have a little think. What do you think a method is? And then start the video again when you're ready. Okay, so a method is a deliberate choice made by the writer. So this could be a language device, so simile, metaphor, personification, could be a structural device like focus, zoom, cliffhanger endings, but it's basically any choice that the writer makes. When you're writing your essays, you need to identify the method and explain why the writer has used it. So, for example, why did Priestley choose that Sheila was in her early 20s rather than her late 20s? Well, he chose to put her in her early 20s so that she's on the cusp of adulthood, but actually she's old enough that she should be taking responsibility for her actions. If Sheila was in her late 20s, it would change the dynamic of the play quite significantly, but he wants someone who's still malleable, who's still changeable, who's still under the influence of her parents in some way. Or if we were thinking about methods in terms of language, we could think, well, why did Priestley choose to have Sheila describe Gerald using this sarcastic phrase, fairy prince? Well, sarcastic phrase, that would be the method. And what we've got to think about is, well, why did Priestley choose to give Sheila that phrase? Well, why is she being sarcastic to Gerald? Well, she's sarcastic because she's really angry with him. She's frustrated that he has betrayed her. Okay, so let's apply this to some quotations then. Let's start with the ring quotation. It's wonderful. Look, mummy, isn't it a beauty? She's showing off her engagement ring to her mother. And I've identified the method. It's an adjective. And it reveals Sheila's delight at becoming engaged. It also highlights her materialism, particularly as the engagement is her stepping stone to wealth. Your job then is to pause the video, copy the quotation down, and you're going to annotate it and do exactly the same as I have just done. Identify the method and then think, why is that method used? What's the effect? What do the words connote? What do they symbolize? Start the video again when you're ready. Here's my analysis then. So we've already looked at the word wonderful. Let's look at the word mummy. Well, a girl in her early 20s, you would be surprised if someone that age was still calling her mother mummy. You know, mum would be much more normal, wouldn't it? So this name reveals Sheila's childishness. She's turning to her mother to look for support and confirmation that she has made the right choice in life. And Sheila behaves in this childish way because she's been infantilized by her parents. They've kept her sheltered from the harsh realities of the world. Remember that in this dining room the curtains are closed, so she can't see out. When she goes out, for example, she goes to Millwood shop, her mum accompanies her, so she really doesn't have much independence or much real experience of the world. And that has resulted in this rather infantilized character. The green bit of the quotation then, she asks her mum, isn't it a beauty? Well, this is a question, that's the method, and it amplifies Sheila's childishness, that need for parental support that she's got. She needs her mum to say, yes, it's a beauty, yes, you've made the right decision, yes, you should marry Gerald. She needs that confirmation from her mother. Okay, same task with the second quotation. Pause the video, copy it down, annotate the quotation, think about the methods, think about why they're used, and then start the video again. Here we go. So the first bit, cheap labour. Well, here Sheila is standing up to Mr. Birling. Mr. Birling has been talking about the strikes and saying, that these girls that he employs, they're expendable. They're people that he can hire or get rid of as he will. And they're people that he just needs to run the machines in his factory. And Sheila's really quite angry when Mr. Birling describes the girls or the employees in that way. She recognises that he sees the girls as being cogs in a capitalist machine, that he's dehumanising them, that he's exploiting them. And the fact that Sheila points this out to her father shows that she's really starting to rebel against him. This is amplified by the word people at the end of that quotation. So this word shows how Sheila is becoming increasingly compassionate. So she recognises the humanity of her father's employees and argues that they should be treated well. So whereas her father sees them as being cogs in a machine, part of his factory almost, Sheila realizes actually these are human beings who we should treat with respect. We should value the work that they do and pay them properly. However, these ideas are undercut a little bit, contradicted a little bit by the pronoun there. So Sheila is growing in her understanding of the world, but the pronoun indicates that she still sees herself as being separate from the workers. So it's not we, her as one of these young women, but it's me and them. She's separating herself from them. Okay, final quotation. Same task, copy it down, annotate it, start the video again when you're ready. Here we go then. So the first thing that I've noticed is the really combative tone that she's adopting, and that really contrasts with the start of the play. So whereas at the start of the play, Sheila looks to her parents for confirmation of her life choices, this pronoun reveals that she's very defiant, she's very argumentative. Second bit of the quotation shows that Sheila's more malleable, she's more changeable than her parents. She's learned her lesson. He's really frustrated with the older generation because they are holding on to their fixed views while she is changing hers. Let's look at the vocabulary then. Your job is to pause the video, write down what you think the definitions are for each of these words, and then start the video again. Okay, here's our definitions. Materialistic, so interested in material wealth. Sheila is showing off her ring to her mum. That shows Sheila's materialism. She values the ring partly because it's expensive, partly because it's a ticket into the upper classes, and all the wealth that will bring her. Infantilized, so notice the word infant is in there. That means to be treated like a child. Moral epiphany, so a moment of realization about right and wrong. Being receptive is being ready to change. Being remorseful is about feeling guilt, feeling remorse. Empathetic, understanding what someone else is going through. And malleable means changeable. So those are our keywords for Sheila. Now what I want you to do for your final task is pause the video, use the words to write a summary of Sheila's character so that you're really practicing using these words. Okay, and thanks very much for listening, everybody. That's the final task of this video. Check out my other videos on my YouTube channel and check out my website, which is amysmithliterature.wordpress.com.